I welcome you all back. We have our three speakers as previously introduced. We have Chris, Tando, and Strino, and we have Chris being joined by Wandile Gama, who is also from Health Plus for Men in Eswatini, who will be highlighting on psychosocial support. I'm hoping that Wandile will briefly share with us who he is, what he does, as I didn't get a chance to introduce him formally. We'll have Chris and Wandile start for us, please.
Thank you so much. Like I've said, my name is Christopher Plus from Health Plus for Men. I'm one person who loves exploring and learning new things at all times. I work as the monitoring and evaluation officer. I love music, going out, yeah. I love people, yeah, that's me. So, yeah, let me hand over to Wandile.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Klaas, and thank you for welcoming us. My name is Wandile Gama. I'm a psychological counselor by profession, but I work for Health Plus for Men as the psychosocial support officer in providing counseling and psychotherapy to key populations, which comprises of the LGBTI community. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. May I first introduce Health Plus for Men. Health Plus for Men is an organization which focuses on issues relating to the LGBTI community as well as other key populations. The organization was founded in 2011 and officially registered in 2014. The delay was caused by its vision. So the vision itself, it compromises with the legal legislative in the country. So yeah. So Health Plus for Men focuses on the health aspect as well as the well-being and other social aspects among these LGBTI or marginalized populations. Through different findings, then we were able to focus on HIV prevention, care and supports for these marginalized populations. We also work hand in hand with other NGOs, the LGBTI-led organizations as a consortium in trying to shape the current legislation, which somehow doesn't give the LGBTI the right to freely express themselves and access essential services. So through other findings, we were able to provide basic needs like shelter. We also provide food parcels, psychosocial support. We also provide capital for business-minded people, especially the LGBTI community, who face challenges of poverty. Yeah, I think so far that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Klaas. I'm going to elaborate more on the psychosocial support component that we have or possess at Health Plus for Men. It is true that we provide counseling services and psychotherapy to key populations. Remember, I mentioned the word key populations. When we speak of key populations, we normally speak of 5 different groups, which are the female sex workers, the people who inject drugs, the transport operators, we also have transgender people, and lastly we have men who have sex with men. And I can maybe interpret it as that the LGBTI community is a subset of the key populations because it is found inside these groups. So We provide psychosocial support. We also boast a gender-based violence case management system, whereby we take care of the key populations mentally. We are able to take them in, give them the necessary services they require or they deserve, and then we then refer them to other stakeholders for further assistance or for further help. And then namely we can name the police, the Human Rights Commission, and other stakeholders. So when we speak of a gender-based violence, we have noticed that gender-based violence is rife amongst the key populations in the LGBTI community, mainly because of the stigma and discrimination they experience in societies, from family level and then to the national level, or else to the African level or the continental level, so to speak. So there are forms of gender-based violence, namely the physical form, which incorporates intimate partner violence. As we all know that there are also relationships that exist within key populations and the LGBTI community. So there's also emotional form of gender-based violence, whereby people will also use derogatory terms when referring to key populations. We also have the financial form, which can include blackmail or not given money due to you. Then we also have the sexual form of gender-based violence, which comprises of corrective rape. We have had cases in the office that we have worked on, whereby clients would come and seek for our services on psychosocial support, counseling, psychotherapy. And then we were able and we managed to help a majority of the key populations, because you find that a lot of the cases they stem from early childhood. There is a misunderstanding when it comes to key populations and the LGBTI community from the family level. Then you find that when this person grows up, they then tend to suffer from childhood traumas stemming from things like neglect. So we then need to incorporate them into therapy so that they can get the help they deserve. So we have noted that there are also alarming cases of cyberbullying, which if we can describe, it falls under one of the forms of gender-based violence because it taps into the emotional state of the individual. Then in cyberbullying, it is these attacks that happen on social media, whereby people will say maybe stuff that is hurtful to someone, and then this person can then be prone to stress, which can graduate into depression and later to suicide. We have seen alarming cases of suicide amongst the key populations and the LGBTI community, and also cyberbullying can make people to be susceptible to the negative view of themselves, to low self-esteem and low self-confidence. So the psychosocial support component then helps in this regard, that everyone should get help, and then everyone should be mentally stable, and then everyone should be able to function on a daily basis and then function right, so that they can be able to make telling decisions about themselves and about their lives going forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Well, I'd like to first introduce myself. My name is Tando Makakula, and I recognize myself as a creative person. By profession, I studied civil engineering, but then I tapped into graphic designer. And I've recently registered a company for myself, MS Creative Studio, and I've been doing work for the last couple of years, but the company was registered a year ago. Well, for me today, it's quite different what my speakers are just talking about, but it's mainly focusing on the underlying topic for the day, I think, which is the issue of gender and of identity. But in my creative space, I was asked to speak about branding in the creative space per se. So talking about branding, I think first I'd like to bring an understanding of what branding is. So branding is actually giving someone a brand or a company or an organization, giving them an identity and for them to sell that identity to their consumers. So that's what essentially branding is. I like to think of it as a car, so to speak. So for me, it's an analogy. Say, branding is what the car is to the company that is selling the car. So what I mean is, as a company, you want to give your consumers information sort of who's this car designed for, what is this car in terms of what does it do, or how does it operate, what does it mean to own the car, which is how branding taps into value, giving value to the product. And also, how does it look like, how does it feel driving the car, which is the visual aspect of the car, appearance of the car. So that's what branding is. Essentially, it's just building a story behind the product. So when the consumer sees the product, there's also a backstory to it, an identity to the product. So one would ask, why is it important to brand something? What is the importance of branding? Well, branding is, what can I say? It sort of builds relationships with between the consumer and the marketer. What I mean is, when you see a product, you associate with a certain product. When you go to a shop, the reason you choose product X over product Y, it's because of the story and what that represents to you, the identity of the product, and how you associate yourself and relate yourself to that product. So with good branding, you are able to give good impressions to your client or to your consumers, and also allow them to build loyalty between your customers and your client. So if you do very well in terms of branding your product, you're able to get more recognition of yourself as a brand and identity, and also you're able to build trust, so to speak, with good branding. Also, I do get, as a creative person, I do get questions in terms of what is branding. Does having a monogram or having a logo, does that certify to as branding? So my answer is not really. A logo does not per se say this is the brand, because a logo is just a representation of the story that brand represents. So it's just a monogram that brings all together these elements that gives you to say this is the logo. I'd make an example of Nike. Nike does not have a sneaker per se to say a sneaker for a logo, or KFC have a chicken, because the story behind the brand itself, it's not what they are selling. The identity behind the brand is not exactly what should be representing the brand. So when Carol Davidson, who designed the Nike logo, and were given a brief to better sell Nike, he decided the movement, the speed, the sportiness of the brand could be best represented with a simple swoosh. And for me, that's the power of what branding could be. So I think I'll just cut it short for now and give it to my next speaker.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I do believe it's the afternoon right now. My name is Sikpino Mwelase. I am a brand strategist, a creative director, and a social media consultant. What I do basically is help businesses and entrepreneurs communicate their value and purpose across multiple mediums of communication. And this work I do as a freelancer. So I'll just add on to what Thando was speaking about, and that is social media branding in particular, in addition to the actual branding that he was talking about. So I have a rule, or there's a certain rule that I'd really love each and every one of us to grasp, on what branding is. I'm happy that I'm getting to speak just right after he did. And that principle or rule that I can actually share with you is that a brand is not your identity. And when I say identity, I mean the logo, which is what most generic people understand a brand to be. It is not your tagline, it is not your email signature or something like that. But what a brand is, that is an experience curated around interactions with your business, product, or a service. Meaning to be branded, to be a brand, you must focus on the experience other than what you have at hand. Not just, do I have a good logo? Do I have a good product? That really doesn't encapsulate what your brand is about, but rather the experience circulating, or rather the experience that cements your product, the experience that cements you as a business. That in itself is a brand. If you are a person who loves to express themselves in a different way, you will love to be attached or associated with a brand that brings out the best in you, if I can just put it quote unquote. That bringing out the best in you, that could be the brand and not actually the product which you are selling. So the brand could be a feeling, it could be a thought, it could be rather anything but what you think as the business you are selling or what you think you have right in hand. Because more than anything, what a brand is or what branding is, it's more mental than it is just physical. I hope everyone does get that. To brand yourself on social media, I would love to mention just two things. It very much depends on two things, if I can dumb it down for everybody. To brand yourself on social media, what you have to do first and foremost, it is to build a profile that, build a profile that emulates a CV. Now, everybody knows what a CV is like. Everybody has seen a CV. Everybody has written a CV. You write a CV differently than you write any other form of writing. That's just because you want to present yourself in the most professional way and in the most well-presented way as possible. So a brand on social media, what you brand yourself as on social media is as you would if you were writing a CV. I have some people who I talk to, have interacted with, some other marketers who say social media is now the new CV. Why? Because when you search for, or rather when you apply for a job, you have HR going through your socials now, looking at what you post, looking at how you interact with other people. That in itself could be regarded as a CV. Why? Because it could be the deal breaker whether you're getting the job or not. Number two, I would like to add on is communicate as you would in a conference room. Now, the reason I put this, or the reason I added this, is because we are in a conference room right now and we are communicating in a different manner than we would when we are out of here. So the communication part is very important, because to communicate, it is how you display what you know, what you do, and who you are. So what that means is to be a brand or to brand yourself on social media, it all comes down to what you say and what you display, being the main things that really center around branding and what a brand is. And maybe if I can just add on a few more things on why appearance matters, because it is social media. We go on social media to view things. We go on social media to interact with people. So why does appearance really matter if you're on social media branding? I'll just mention these few things in passing. Looks can be deceiving. You don't judge a book by its cover. First impressions last, and seeing is believing. If you look, or if you go through these things, these are just sayings that are centered around appearance. And why is that? It's because the visual representation of something usually gives us an inclination, or rather a perception of how good or how bad or the state of whatever it is you are looking at. And that's just why appearance matters. So as you appear on social media, what kind of image are you actually giving out to the person who is viewing your page? There's certain branding, there's certain tactics that have to be followed. You have an AVI, which is a profile picture. You have a header, you have a banner, if it's maybe Twitter, if it's maybe Facebook. You have a biography. Those mediums they are put there to actually let you, as the person who wants to be branded, best communicate your value, best communicate your purpose. Because as I said, branding is more about the purpose, it is more about your value, and that just creates the experience for the end user. So as you are displaying your profile, as you are displaying yourself on social media, how are you curating an experience around Siqino? That's me. as you are going through my social media, what are you seeing that makes you think that is a good person, that is a good enough person who I can be associated with? What experience are you foreseeing from just going through my biography? Biography being what you actually entail in your social media, telling who you are, what you do, why or how you do it, which are the most important things to actually add on your biography if you want to be properly branded or if you are aiming for proper branding on social media. This what it does, it actually communicates your value, it actually communicates it puts you in a better position, or rather separates you from everybody else. The header, the banner, the AVI, the profile picture. We can all have one and the same profile picture, but how we then communicate that through our biography can then set us apart from the next person. Or each and every one of us having a different profile picture give a different perspective of who we are and what we do. Those are things that tell the next person who it is you are. There's a certain trend on Twitter a couple of months back, I'm not sure if it's actually going on now, whereby people would tweet, "What is my brand on Twitter?" The truth is, if you go to the normal person and ask them what a brand is, they're probably going to mention Nike, just as it did. They're probably going to mention another big brand. But the fact is, when a person goes on Twitter now and says, "What is your brand on Twitter?" you probably had somebody who rushed to check their profile. And then out of nowhere, just assumed, you know what, this person looks like a nice person. This person probably looks like a person who likes to go out. How do you identify those things? You identify them through what? Their profile. You identify it through what they're writing on their biography, through their profile picture, through the hashtags, through things that they interact with. Because on social media, what matters more than just the followers, what matters more than just the likes, if I can call it, is the actual interaction, the engagement. So what am I engaging with? Who am I engaging with? And as I engage with people, what manner of engagement am I actually carrying myself with? That stipulates the brand for the person tweeting, "What is my brand on Twitter?" Which goes to say that a brand isn't really the logo, it isn't really the tagline, it isn't really the header or everything else that you would think you need to contact a graphic designer or an identity designer to actually brand you, but it is this mental construct which the end user makes or forms around what you are delivering as an entity or as a person. So your deliverance on social media has to be up to par with what you value, who you value, what you do, and how you actually plan to do it, or how you've been doing it this past few years, if that's how long you've been actually doing it. And maybe just to add on communication, because I was talking about appearance right now, here's another rule, but I've already mentioned this one in passing, that a successful social media account is not one that has thousands of followers, but one that has many or the most engagement and the most interaction from his followers. Because having 2,000 followers is nothing if I can't get two people to actually communicate or interact with me on what I've just said or what I've just put out there on social media. It is nothing if another person has 500 followers but can get even more than the 500 people to actually comment, to actually like, to actually forward or share that piece of information which was actually out there. So, and then another thing to actually put in mind or have in mind about social media is that social networks differ in terms of their culture, their generic use, or rather above their generic use. You have Instagram, which is used for posting videos. More than anything, it's just videos, it's pictures. But the culture of Instagram differs from Twitter, where you also can post videos, where you also can post pictures. It differs in the sense that the way Twitters, I'll call them tweeters because, yeah, the way people who tweet or Twitter users carry themselves differently when in the app than they do when they're in Instagram, which is why you have people in Swaziland, or whereby we refer to Facebook by a certain name. I'd rather not mention it right now. And then you hear Twitter is regarded as something different. Why? Because it is the understanding of when you're in Twitter, you are at a different place than you are when you are on Facebook. So the manner in which you carry yourself as a user is different. So the manner in which you carry yourself as the person who is handling that account should be different than you would as as on Facebook, which is why one other important aspect of handling social media pages is that you must not think, or rather do not be deceived into posting one and the same content across all social media platforms. And why is this? It's because the people who ingest content across these platforms, they ingest it differently. I may be on Twitter, but seeing your tweet and seeing it on Facebook could also hit me differently, you understand? And yet you would think just because it's content at the end of the day, that's what it's referred to nowadays. Content is not all the same, especially where you deliver it. How you write a Facebook post should be different from how you write a Twitter post. So those are things social media managers should understand. Those are things you as a person who wants to be a brand, or who is building yourself up to being a brand, should understand. And if there's just one last thing that I'll close on with, it's the issue of branding around influencers, or the issue of branding a certain page, branding Rock of Hope, branding the other organizations that are here. As a social media manager, you should understand, or rather identify yourself as an influencer. It's very important that you do so. Or rather, identify the page that you are handling as an influencer. That page, if I'm handling Rock of Hope SD, that page in itself is an influencer. If I'm handling MH Creative Studios page, the page in its own it acts as an influencer. And what an influencer is, that's just a person who is able to manipulate the buying power or perception of consumers regarding a certain product or a certain service. As the person who is handling that page, it is within your power to manipulate the perception of the other user about your certain product, about your certain service. Hence, branding and rather communicating in a particular manner is very important. I can't, as a person handling MH Creative Studios page on Twitter, tweet about food. Why? Because MH Creative Studio, that has nothing to do with food, unless we are branding a certain entity that has to do with food. But until then, we will keep it strictly creative. Hence, communicating matters. We will keep it strictly creative on Twitter according to Twitter standards. We will keep it strictly creative on Facebook according to Facebook standards. And those are standards social media managers should understand and should be very much I don't know what I can say, but rather very much well accustomed to. It is important that you, as a person who is on social media, you don't find yourself falling short of these things. You don't find yourself being influenced by others, joining on to trends that are not actually in alignment with your brand. Because as everybody seated here, we understand what our mission is. I, as Siklino, have a certain mission. I have a certain agenda that I'm trying to push on Twitter. So I can't find myself interacting or falling short or slipping across other content that isn't necessarily in line with what I'm trying to put out there. And another issue, I promise you guys, this is literally the last one, I swear. Last, but very much not least, it's the matter of being an influencer or acting as an influencer on social media requires you to eat. And I'm not talking about food, but rather EAT. Now, why EAT? E for expertise. You have to display your expertise more than anything, which means you just have to talk about what you know. Do not talk about something else that has nothing to do with you. Hence, MH Creative Studios talking about KFC. Unless you are doing a KFC project, you will not talk about KFC. A, which is basically authority, assume authority. That you do in the manner at which you talk. If you have somebody bullying you, you can't then fall short to that and then you start answering them in a weird or in a very unprofessional manner, because what you are doing, you are displaying your lack of understanding or your lack of perception according to who you are or according to what other people should be viewing you as. That's just authority. There has to be authority around your name. You can display it through character and use of language specific to your brand. That's why you have, I'll make an example of Nando's. Nando's is known on Twitter for their funny comments, certain memes, or just the way they communicate with their market is far different than the way KFC does on Twitter. And that in itself gives them a certain authority over things. You know, You have followers who know they can mention Nando's on some things because of the response Nando's will give out on those things. And then lastly, it is the T, that is trust, employing trust between you and the people who are actually following you. And this actually is just a ripple effect. It comes automatically as long as you apply the first two, that is showing your expertise and authority. As you do that, followers and actually the many other people on that platform will learn to trust you, because what did you do? You showed expertise on what you know, or rather what you are doing, and more than anything, you displayed authority. You were not moved in your position. Nobody can just come to you and say something and then you are there, being loud or start catching fire or start doing anything. That in itself puts you in a position that in itself allows you to be branded properly, or allows the many people who are following you to look at you at a certain perspective and understand who you are and what you do outside of just the product you are delivering. Because as we said, branding is way, way more than the product. It is way above just your logo. It is way above your identity, but it is more about the perception and the experience that it is centered around who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Other than that, I don't think I'll have anything else. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank our speakers. That was very insightful. I also have questions of my own before we move on. One for Wandile and one for Strino.
Oh, wow.
So in terms of psychosocial support, right, I'll make an example with with AA. They normally have one-on-one meetings, if I'm not mistaken, when they get to share their story and get to express maybe how they feel emotionally, as well as the journey to getting better or not being what they currently identify as. So you mentioned that there are 5 groups, right? So what kind of means do you guys have to that falls under psychosocial support? Can you unravel that part?
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of our service rollout pertaining the psychosocial support services, we do one-on-one counseling sessions whereby someone will come to the office personally or over the phone, and then we can deliberate on any matter they bring forward or on the table. And then on the virtual one, we can do phone calls, because as we all know that the members of the key populations, they tend to struggle financially. Then you find that someone is far away from the office, then we can conduct our sessions over the phone. So we can be able to conduct our sessions over the phone, as a way maybe that they can get the service without cost. And then our services are for free at Helpless for Men. So anyone could access those services in the members of the key populations.
Thank you so much. First, I'm hoping this is within your level of expertise. I would like to know the story behind certain logos being blurred out. Mm-hmm. Maybe you see this on TV, yes. Music videos. Yeah, there's certain brands that are blurred out. Why is that? Sorry, not brand, logos. Yes.
Allow me to be correct. If I'm wrong, please don't tweet about this. What I understand is licensing. That's just the one thing I think I can bring into your picture. Yeah. Some other brands or some other companies will not, or rather would not like to find their image or parts of themselves, parts of their identity being used without their approval. Hence, what they will do, or rather the person using it, DJ Khalid, at the end of the day, what he will do, they will play out that certain picture, that certain clip where you have a logo. Why? Because they do not have the right to distribute. Because in a sense, that's seen as distribution, you understand? So if I, the wielder or the actual person behind certain, or rather behind certain logo, behind certain product, and you are using it without my permission, it is within my full right to sue you. Yes, hence they actually blur those out. And again, I may be wrong.
No, you're not.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all those answers. I am very much knowledgeable, well, much more than when I arrived. We're taking questions on the floor, and we have someone to ask.
I have a question for Tando in terms of branding. Let's say there was the aspect of cyberbullying mentioned by, there was a section about cyberbullying mentioned by Health Plus for Men. What happens if someone doesn't understand the logo as Stephen touched on, or maybe they are not as receptive as you had hoped? Can you advise someone like, how can I change my branding, or how do I know my branding is off, you know? Is there any tips you can give me as someone who's not familiar with branding?
No. Well, thank you for the question. There are aspects of where you find where a logo has been wrongly interpreted. A lot of instances online, and as a person, as a creative, or in my creative profession and expertise, it is advisable for you to change the logo. So I'd advise for you to find a creative agency that has been working in the business for the longest of times to actually give you a better understanding of why your logo is wrong. Because when you're developing a logo or changing any project, you need to understand the why. So once you understand and develop the why, then you can be able to solve the problem for that client. And in many cases, you find that most of our clients, or clients in general, they don't really understand why they need to change their logos. So other than you coming into their space as a creative, it's better, and it's also it creates a better trust and significance to them when you come to them as a problem solver, other than just somebody who just provides a product to them. So yeah, I think I'll just end there for the question. I don't know if that answers you.
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. For everybody that did not get to eat, may we please step outside for refreshments. But from our side, we'd like to really say thank you for your time and for your presence. You could have had a lot of things to do today, but you chose to be here with us, share your knowledge. I hope that everyone feels that they've gained as much knowledge as I have today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to everyone for the participation.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm trying to talk to the mic, you know. Hala.
Okay, Chris would like to say something.
Yes. Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Since we are working with the key populations as well as LGBTI community members, of which a lot of people have their own beliefs, you understand?
Yeah.
So how best can we run away from cyberbullying on our social media pages, because we cannot change the brand? You understand? So we are just out there letting the people know, letting the LGBTI and the most marginalized people know that this is what we are doing for you. Yeah.
If I may,
Yeah.
I think it all goes down to purpose and value. As long as you bring the value which you yourself were brought forth for, there'll always be someone out there who maybe feels like your value isn't value enough for them, and yet you are catering for a certain market or for a certain people who needs the value more than the other person. At the end of the day, there is even a tweet by, I'm sorry, I use Twitter a lot. There's a tweet by Tyler, the Creator, whereby he says he doesn't understand cyberbullying because you can easily choose to get off from your phone. True, you cannot really do that. But it's a matter of communicating the best way that you can, because as I've said, you can't backlash at them. Like somebody said something awful, so you're going to say something awful. It's a choice of either stepping away or trying to or trying to actually articulate yourself in a manner that shows how you are bringing yourself into the situation as a calm person and also as a person who is bringing with them certain objectives. You are a certain organization that is meant to do this. What does it mean if another person doesn't actually understand that? Does that mean you are not doing enough, or does that mean maybe the person talking to you at that point doesn't understand what you are doing? If they don't understand what you are doing to the point that they think they should say something about it, you can either actually correct them, you can either actually speak to them in a sense that doesn't disrupt your demeanor or perhaps paints you as the evil person, because now they have more reason to actually throw hands at you, you understand? But it doesn't change the fact that there's certain value which you aim to bring, there's a certain purpose which your brand, which yourself, or which your, I want to say, your profile was meant to do. You understand? So communicating that the best way you can, and I'm pretty sure there are certain values, there are certain code of conduct that you put in place as an organization, because regardless of how, or regardless of where we find ourselves as people, there's a certain way we have to conduct ourselves, regardless of how they actually interact with us, because we are trying to maintain a certain image. That in itself is branding. The fact that how do you handle yourself when somebody says something? How do you then maneuver a situation? Is it in line with your purpose? Is it in line with the values you are trying to instill around a certain agenda, a certain message? Does that really advocate for that? So I think more than anything, because you can never know. As long as it's two people involved, it will always be a tricky situation. But are you sticking to what you came here for more than anything? And if you've said it, I always say honesty is literally the best card, because after it, there's nothing else you can do. You are done. You know you did your best. This is literally it. So beyond that, what else can you do if another person keeps on throwing hands at you, besides actually sticking to your code of conduct? That is, maybe you just swift away from a violent situation, but having articulated yourself in a manner that shows and displays your value, your purpose, without demeaning who you actually are. I think that's just the best way I can answer that one.
And thank you so much.
All
I
right.
think one lesson.
Okay. Okay.
So let's say now it's an insult.
Okay.
Literally an insult. Is it okay to hide the insult or the comment? Or
I think it is. I think it is okay to hide.
to hide?
You can definitely hide it from being viewed by other people. Yes, you can hide. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom of the hide button.
Freedom of the hide.
Yes.
Yeah, because they have been facing these challenges.
And then you have some people who are actually commenting, throwing these insults. No, it is okay to hide them, because maybe, or rather, what you are trying to do is protect yourself from being associated with certain things. So that association with the vulgar, because any stain on you reflects on your entire brand. It reflects on your entire branding. That one thing, I saw an insult that other day, regardless of what they will say, there was just an insult there. That could be the one thing another person remembers you by. So you wanna, as a brand, you really wanna be in control of how people view you and how people actually interact with you. Because it's your page even, so why not just hide that? That's my best advice. Anyone else? No? All right, thank you so much.
Does anyone else have questions before we officially close? Okay, thank you.
So we're done. Cut. Nakusuka kutse cut.
Cut.
I like say cut.